There's a room with some of the books that he borrows from the library and his bed in his room. And he is extraordinary. 10 minutes in his presence makes you feel like you are privileged, or you've eaten an extraordinary meal, or you've partaken of something very, very rich. Something which will change you for the rest of your life. Nothing he said was meaningless, nothing was filler. Everything had wisdom in it. Now the other person who I would say has riches beyond belief, and yet, trust me, she lives from month to month, is Reverend Dolores Berry. Now she's an NCC evangelist who lives with her partner in Pennsylvania, and they live entirely on the money which is donated to them from visiting MCC churches and churches around the country and around the world, and singing and preaching and truly being an amazing person. But you spend 10 minutes with Dolores Berry and she has a capacity to change your life. I spent a week with Dolores Berry 2 years ago, and within a week of coming back from that week with Dolores Berry, I had given up a fully funded place at medical school. I had made arrangements for Leon and I to travel to the United States, and I'd made it quite clear that just as soon as it could be arranged, I would be leaving my friends and family in England and coming to pastor a church over here. Now, it wasn't, of course, Dolores Berry or Don Giles Hill, which were extraordinary. It was the ability to which they had seen the value of that relationship with God, that loving relationship with God. They had no fear of it at all, nothing at all. And they were channeling something which is the wellspring of all meaning and all fulfillment in our lives. I've lost myself again. I do this regularly. Actually, I haven't done this for a few weeks, have I? Now, we can't live a fearless life on our own. We can't do much on our own. We're not supposed to be on our own. We weren't created to be on our own, and we can't live viably on our own. We do not live as islands, as much as we may like to believe we do. We don't. We are linked to every other human being on Earth, however tenuous the link may be. We're also related to every other human being on Earth, and I mean that genetically, and we breathe the same air. The lines which are drawn on maps are meaningful only in recent political sense. Spiritually, we are very, very close. We are all in receipt of the same relationship with God. There are 6.5 billion different relationships going on, but it's with the same God. 6.5 billion different relationships, but all with the same God, whether they know it or not. We are all interwoven and interrelated, and the only way that we can truly be fully human is by celebrating our humanness and the humanity of each and every other person, and not seeing that as something which is base and animal. It's not. It's how we were intended to be. It's glorious and it's wonderful. And it's what links us to God. It's what makes us God-like. We are human beings. We can create things. We can destroy things. We can create wonderful things. With a word, we can make people happy. With a gesture, we can transform people's lives sometimes. You know, we have the power to do all these things. People say, I cannot make a difference, but yes, you can. Oh, yes, you can. Yes, you can. Now, when I first came to this church, there were 11 people regularly attending in the church. Now, there's no conceivable way that I could have followed that call from God and come all the way from London to New Orleans if those 11 people hadn't been being faithful and paying their money every week and turning up every week when, trust me, I don't know how they turned up every week, because at times it must have been pretty heavy. And they must have been seriously discouraged and think, well, why are we doing this? But because they did it, they changed things fairly radically. 2 weeks ago, we had 80 people in church. But more importantly, we touched 80 people. We were able to get a message which is profoundly different from mainstream, usual, same old Christian preaching to 80 people on that particular Sunday. Now, how many people did we get through the website? Thousands. I think there's about 8,000 hits on our sermons in the last week. I mean, 8,000 hits to date. Our website has had, what, about 85, 90,000 hits in the last year? And it's because of individual people making a difference. If it wasn't for Trent stepping up, a whole load of the changes and the development that we have had in this church would never have happened in the last few weeks. Same goes for James. Same goes for Lee, Francis, Leon, Ken, Russ. And if I left anyone else, it's just because the list is rather long at the moment. But individual human beings make a hell of a difference. And we deceive ourselves when we say we cannot make a difference. You can make a difference. Amen. Now, if we form ourselves as creatures of love, people in the habit of loving, then fear falls away like chaff or dust from our feet. The habit is a way of internalizing what we understand with our heads. The habit of the presence of God, the habit of equality, the habit of love replaces the habit of fear and weakness and hate. Jesus knew this, that the biggest barrier to people following his teachings, the biggest barrier to people beginning to live life in a completely different way, the biggest barrier to people reaching out and claiming complete transformation, transfiguration, from just the person that you see in a dusty robe on a hillside into this shining thing that looks like a god. That was a transfiguration in the New Testament. Well, the same thing is available to each and every one of us. Just below the mundane surface lies something truly extraordinary and glorious. And the only thing, oftentimes, preventing us from accessing that is our fear. Mighty God, give us courage to cast aside the fear that surrounds us and chokes us and threatens to stifle us. Give us courage to access our true selves with all our abilities. Give us access to our vocation. Allow us to be the best that we can be, not just for your sake, but for the sake of all those around us, and ultimately for our own sake. Help us to look in the mirror and see something wonderful and something amazing.